Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneurs on Fire, and catch me on this week of The Jesse T Show.
JLD, what's going on, brother?
Jesse, honored to be here, brother. Let's light it up.
Bro, it is already on fire. The energy is palpable, man. Just our conversation before we jumped on, man. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. One of our great friends, Mark Victor Hansen, brought us together. And, he's done great things in the world, man. So I am just excited and pumped to have you on the show, man. For those couple people in the universe that haven't heard the JLD, man, what's going on in your world? Who are you? And give us some context, brother.
Well, number one, just you and I are just a couple guys from the Northeast. I'm a Mainer. You're from Beantown, Boston, and life is good for sure. I personally escaped, that miserable winter that it's experienced up there. And I now, and for the past 4.5 years, live in the lovely Puerto Rico island down here in the Caribbean, where it's always sunny and taxes are 4%. So as a wealth manager, I know that's a big positive for you, my man. But yeah, grew up, born and raised in Maine, loved it, Southern Maine. So I was only about 90 minutes outside of Boston. Used to go down to the Boston Red Sox games, Celtics fan growing up, obviously Pats fan, all that jazz. And after my first 18 years in Maine, I spent 4 years as an Army cadet on an Army ROTC scholarship at Providence College in Rhode Island. And then post-college, 8 years as an officer in the Army. I did a 13-month tour of duty in Iraq as a tank commander, which means
appreciate your service, brother.
In charge. Thank you. You're in charge of 4 tanks and 16 men. So that was a pretty intense experience for sure. After that, though, I went through what I call 6 years of struggle, where I tried a bunch of things, but nothing was really working. Nothing was fulfilling. I was really chasing what I thought was success. I tried law school, dropped out after 1 semester. Tried corporate finance. It just wasn't for me. I tried residential real estate, commercial real estate, and I just wasn't clicking in any of those things. Wasn't finding myself happy or fulfilled or any of those things. And then it literally was a quote by Albert Einstein that reached out and slapped me in the face when I read it. And the quote was, "Try not to become a person of success, but rather a person of value." And I was like, whoa, here I am, 32 years old. When I read this, and I was like, I've only been chasing success. That's the only thing that I've been chasing. What have I been doing that's actually of value to this world? Like Albert Einstein's claiming that I should be doing. And the answer was kind of nothing. So I said, well, how can I really add value to this world? And I thought about the things that are adding value in my life. And interestingly enough, Jesse, at that time in 2012, podcasts were adding massive value to my life because I loved the medium. I understood it. I just really got the fact that, it was free, it was on demand, and it was targeted content. I could listen to a podcast about wealth, about health, about music, about sports, press play and pause when I wanted to. I mean, I was out in San Diego at the time and radio was crap. I don't want to listen about the San Diego Chargers or Miley Cyrus on the radio. I wanted to be in the car listening to what I wanted to be listening to. And so I said, okay, well, now I know how I'm getting value. What's missing in the podcasting space? And I said, well, my biggest complaint about the podcasts that I love, which are podcasts that interview successful entrepreneurs, is that they come out once a week. And I'm like, I get it because it's a lot of work, but to me, once a week isn't enough because I listen to an episode on Monday. I got to wait 7 days for the next episode. I mean, hello, we live in a binging culture. I get all of my Netflix on one day. Why can't I get all the podcasts I want on one day? So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go find the daily podcast that interviews entrepreneurs. And it didn't exist, Jesse. It did not exist. And then my mind was blown. I was like, there's a void that needs to be filled. There needs to be a daily podcast that interviews entrepreneurs. And guess what? That's my opportunity. Like Gandhi said, be that change you want to see in the world. I said, why can't I step into that void, create the first daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs? And so, Jesse, I launched that podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire, back in September of 2012. And the day that I launched, it was the best daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs.
Damn.
Jesse, it was the worst daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. It was the only daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. And so when people are like, John, how do I become the best? I'm like, be the only, then you'll be the best. You'll also be the worst, but you'll be the best. And I, by the way, was bad at interviewing people, at podcasting, at communicating, at public speaking. I was bad at all of those things, but I did it every single day. I put in the reps. And I got a little bit better every single time that I did it. And luckily, I had people like Mark Victor Hansen and Tim Ferriss and Gary Vaynerchuk and Seth Godin on my podcast. So like the show was great because of them and their content. And over time, Entrepreneurs on Fire, became a very popular podcast, was awarded Best of Apple iTunes. It's now getting over 1.4 million listens every single month. And by year 2, it was a 7-figure a year business. And that's net profit for all of you wealth people out there. You can understand 7 figures in gross. I'm not gonna say it's easy to do, but you can make 1 million easily if you're spending 2 million. And some people do that. And they're like, oh, I made $1 million last year, but I spent $2 million doing it. So not impressive. This has been a 7-figure net profit a year business for the 7th year in a row, 2013 all the way to 2020. And now we're into 2021.